Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at gcnlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? Here we go. Your dial is set correctly to USAPrepares.com. And if you'd like to call us, 866-582-9933. If you'd like to listen, 605-477-3249. John's engineering the broadcast in Minnesota at GCN. I'm Vincent Finelli, and today, hour number one, we're going to be learning about emergency preparedness and more. Howard Godfrey's been with us numerous times on this broadcast, and he's written a fabulous, I would call this a manual, on emergency preparedness and more. It's a second edition. And let me just read something to you. On the back of this book, it says, watching mainstream television will encourage learned helplessness. Emergency preparedness and more is just the opposite. It will cut to the chase and save you time and money. An outstanding manual focused on preparing for your survival. How to prepare, what to prepare, and why. It's similar to years of USA Prepares broadcasts in a single volume. If you're new to preparedness and survival, reading this manual from cover to cover is your best first step. I wrote that, and it's on the back cover, and I was flattered to be asked to review this book prior to publication. Honored. Welcome, Howard Godfrey. Howard, are you there? Just me? Oh, geez. Let's see. I do not have a return from Howard Godfrey. John, are you there? Or is it just me? Well, I'm looking at the meters. Everything looks fine at my end. I don't see... the audio meters look good. The return looks good, but I do not hear Howard. I hear my own signal. Nope.
Hello?
Hey, Howard. Glad to hear you.
I answer all the time. I can hear you fine.
Oh, great. Well, now I can hear you. So, welcome. I'm so glad you're here, and I've got your book in my hands. Over 400 pages. I've got to ask you, Howard, what was the inspiration for writing such a complete volume?
You know, all my life I've been interested in it. I was born in England during World War II, and I was raised on stories of the rationing. I can remember how when we first moved to Canada, hearing about how my mother cried when she first went into a butcher shop and saw all the meat that was available. And I was raised hearing about that as a child. My father grew up in the Depression in northern Michigan and had a really rough existence. My parents were into this and preparedness all their lives. My father's still alive, and he's in his 90s now, and he's still interested in it. But I've been raised around it all my life, so I wanted to do something that would help people and make people aware of what they could do, what they could accomplish, and what they needed to store.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned World War II England?
Yes.
bombings,
Yes.
daily bombings, buildings being blown to bits, just having shoes at the ready to jump out of bed with shoes and run out from wherever you are. Wasn't that important? I mean, just something as simple as that.
Yeah, things like that are, I was a little young, so I didn't experience some of it, but at the same time, I've been taught all my life and heard about it. And yes, my mother would have to go down to the bomb shelter. She was living in Portsmouth, one of the more heavily bombed areas, and she spent night after night in the bomb shelter, and I did as a child. Although when I was 3 days old, I was evacuated from the area. They were moving children out and everything. So I've been exposed to the stories of it my whole life, my grandparents and everybody, and it really makes me aware of it, of just how nasty it can get. And yeah, little things like having shoes by the side of your bed, having your clothes where you can find them. I put my clothes and my shoes in the same place every night, so I know where they are.
Mm-hmm. So you can find them in the dark if you have to, because
Yes.
the lights may not be, the power may not be there.
That's
Really
correct.
good points. And, I've talked to my grandparents. I wish I had spent more time talking to them about the Great Depression and how awful it was, and raising, your own food. And people who lived in cities converted their backyards to gardens because they had to. They had to, and to survive. And so genetically, and I think we've got some of that material in us, Howard. I really believe that. And you ask a question that's a little disconcerting, when someone reads it for the first time. This is in your book. And the question is, will you eat a rat? What's that all about?
Well, if you go back to England and you go back to World War II, and people ate cats, rats, they ate all kinds of things to survive. And you have to ask yourself the question right at the beginning, are you prepared to eat a rat? Are you prepared to do what it takes to survive? And you have to put yourself in that frame psychologically so that you will do what's required. And by asking that question now beforehand and giving it some thought, you can get that straight in your mind. If you can't get that straight in your mind, if you're not prepared to do it, why waste money on preparing?
Good point. And, that brings to mind a question that I've asked some of our meetup group members. And the question is, are you prepared to shoot someone in a defensive situation? Are you prepared to take another life if you have to for your own survival? And that relates to the question you ask before you purchase a gun. And if the answer is no, I don't think I'm willing to take someone's life, then don't get that gun. Because that gun may be, you may have it loaded, and that gun may be taken from you and used on you. So that's why I've asked that question. I think this is a great question. And then you go on to say, in a real survival situation, when you're short of food, you have to eat anything and everything. A meal missed is calories you may never get back.
That's entirely correct. If you talk to prisoners who are in a prisoner of war camp or somebody who's been in a starvation situation, you will discover that the survivors were the ones who never missed a meal. When they had a chance to get food, they ate it, regardless of what it was.
And as I read through the book, I noticed something. There's an image, a picture of a 275-gallon IBC tote. Class, what this is roughly 4 feet wide, 4 feet high, 4 feet deep. It's a plastic box. It's a cube. The dimensions are slightly different depending whether you get a 300 or a 275-gallon tote. It's got a dispensing valve on the bottom and a fill cap on the top. It's white plastic, and it's in a steel cage, and it's palletized. Howard, in your book, you say that you have them. Why do you have those?
Oh, they're great for storing water. You can let you store a lot of water in a small place. You can stack them 3 high if you have availability of a forklift. Or you can they're light enough, you can set one on top of another when they're empty and then fill them in place. And the thing about those is you can store a lot of water in a small place, and I'm a great believer in storing water. Water is critical to our survival in every way, and most of us don't have a good alternate source unless you live in the farm or you live in the country. So it pays to have water on hand and readily available.
Mm-hmm. Howard, I have I have 4 of these, and I have them stacked. Not 4. I have one stacked on another in a location where when the grid is down or the power's out, or if I have to use a generator, I can make sure that they are filled up. Let's say they are empty to start with. I can fill them up, or I can have them pre-filled. And because they're stacked in a location where I have them, they are higher than the faucet. So now I have gravity feed water. So I can run a generator if I want to, or use solar power, run the well pump, fill these totes over and over again, maybe once a week, and I'll have stored water. And that's a lot easier than storing electricity. So it's hard to pump water. You can run the generator for, let's say you can pump 10 gallons a minute out of a well. If you have 600 gallons of water stored, 60 minutes, you can fill that up. So you can run your generator for 60 minutes, 1 hour, and have a week's worth of water, then shut the generator off. What do you think?
Well, I think that's ideal. I think a situation like that will put you in good shape. I mean, you have 600 gallons of water. If you use it conservative, it will last you a significant period of time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And let's say, class, you've got, let's say you've got a garage, and you stack them in the corner of your garage, and you plumb them into your household water system, and you have a ball valve to shut that off. Keep them full, and we'll talk in a minute about how to make sure that water doesn't go bad. Then you can go down to your basement where you have a faucet or a shower or a toilet, and now you've got all the conveniences of before a grid down situation, except you won't have quite the water pressure. What a great way to go. Howard, how do we come back? How do we treat that water? Do we treat that water? If it's municipal water to start with, do we do anything? If it's well water to start with, do we do anything? What are your suggestions? Let's talk about that when we come back. Howard Godfrey and his manual, Emergency Preparedness and More. It's available on Amazon, or you can go to usaprepares.com, page 1. There's a link that'll take you right to the book. Dr. Howard Godfrey's with us, and we're talking about emergency preparedness and more, and we talked about these water totes. I have at the farm 4 of them. Ours are 330 gallons each, and they're roughly 4 feet by 4 feet by 4 feet, and there's a steel cage around the plastic container inside. They're fabulous for storing water, and I paid about $75 each for them. I've got them already positioned. They're plumbed for filling up with water and dispensing water through a plumbing system into the house. So they're ready to go. Howard, how do we treat the water once we put it in? Let's say we live in a neighborhood and we have municipal water. Do we do anything, or just fill them up and do we cover them to keep them in the dark, let light get to them? What do we do?
Okay, first of all, let me qualify one thing. When you buy that container, know what was in it beforehand. Some of those have been used for chemical storage. Some of them have been used for other things. So find out what was in it, particularly if you buy a used one.
Right. Some of them have had Roundup in them. Seriously. Some may have cooking oil. Some may have, other food products. You're absolutely right. And in that line of thinking, if it does not have the original label as to what the contents were, do not buy it for any purpose that would relate to your ingestion. Nothing. Okay, because the guy that's selling it could say, "Oh no, this just had an ingredient for cookie dough in there," and it may have had Roundup in there. So I wouldn't trust anyone that I don't know that would represent a container like this for being food used for food purposes without the label. Do you agree with that, Howard?
Yeah, I agree with that entirely. That's very good advice. Now, if you're going to store water in them, first of all, make sure they're clean. And what I like to do is, before I fill them, I put bleach, Clorox around the top, the cap, and everything. And I will pour, even though I use municipal water, theoretically, if you put municipal water into a clean container and you seal it, 10 years from now, that municipal water still should be good, in theory, as long as it has not been exposed to contaminants. Personally, I go ahead, I make sure the container is clean all around where I'm top. I make sure that the item that I'm using to fill it, the hose, is clean. I use a good water quality hose, and I throw in a couple of cups of bleach. Now, the reason I put in the bleach is because of anything that might be in the container. I realize that 6 months from now, that bleach is going to be gone. But the water, if the container is clean and sterile, then the water is going to stay good, as long as it's kept sealed and it's not exposed to outside contaminants.
Okay. Now, do you cover the container because it's a translucent white, milky white plastic?
I
do you cover it to keep the light up?
Yeah, I keep them in an area where they are not exposed to sunlight. You also want to be careful what you store by them. You don't want to store it around chemicals and gasoline, because you have to remember that to some degree all plastic breathes, and it's possible to get chemical contamination inside the container if they're set next to something or have, flammable liquid, something like that, poured on the hydrocarbons. It's possible you could get something in the container.
When I got ours, Howard, they were food ingredients in them, so I wanted to wash them out. So I washed them out with a small amount of detergent and water. And this is a multi-step process. And, how do you really clean these out? Well, what I did was I filled them about maybe 30 gallons of water, clean water. Just a couple drops of detergent and liquid detergent, like dishwashing detergent. And before I put the water in, I put them in the pickup truck. Put 2 of them in there. And I took them for a ride. And so I went down the road, left turn, right turn, stop, start. So this water was sloshing around, and just taking these containers for a ride in the pickup truck was the shaking action that I needed. And I drained them, hosed them out, clean water, put clean water, refilled them with clean water again, took them for a ride, and did that a couple more times. And then I let them drip dry, empty out. And that's how I did it. Think that's okay?
That sounds great. We used a pressure washer.
There you go. That's even better.
That worked good.
Howard Godfrey's with us. Howard, the book is well over 400 pages. And early in the book, you talk about 5-gallon containers and also 15 to 30-gallon containers. And you mentioned that if you know a restaurant or bakery owner, check with them to see how they dispose of their containers. Can you tell us a little bit more about the restaurant and bakery owners? A smaller container, 15 to 30 gallons, might fit well with many people listening to this broadcast, who live in environments where they just don't have the room.
That's correct. Now, I've got a lot of 5-gallon buckets, food-grade buckets off of the restaurants around here. A lot of their food comes in those, anything from icing to flour to all kinds of different things comes in buckets now. So if you can get those buckets, they're really good for storing. You can store water, you can store food in them. The thing I would caution, if you store food in them, realize again that they do breathe. If you're storing stuff for long term, you need to put it in Mylar bags and use oxygen absorbers. But those buckets can save you a lot of money. And just becoming friends with somebody at a local restaurant, I've also got a lot of them from the bakery departments at the supermarkets.
Mm-hmm.
And
icing, as you said, icing comes in them. Restaurants, pickles come in them at restaurants and sub shops. And the only problem with pickles is they'll smell for like a year.
yeah, if I use pickles, I don't put water in them. I put a Mylar bag and food in them.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're going to store food in them, if you're going to store water in them, be sure you get food grade in them. And if for food, I strongly recommend you use the big Mylar bags and oxygen absorbers. Mm-hmm. That gives you the
and you even have the identifier symbols for how to tell what plastic is what plastic in your book. Howard, you talk about something that maybe we don't think about, and that is, let's say you get out to the country or you live out in the country and the power goes down and your generator just doesn't fire up right, or you haven't wired it in for 220 volts or 240 volts. You describe how to fabricate a dipper, a well dipper, out of a piece of 2-inch plastic pipe and a toilet tank flush valve. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure.
And a piece of rope.
You use the plastic pipe and just take a length of it, maybe 18 inches to 2 feet in length, of the 2-inch pipe, and you put a fitting on the bottom, and you make it a foot valve at the bottom with the flapper from the toilet, so that when you lower it in, the water will come into the bucket. But then when you start to lift it, the flapper drops into place and seals the bottom of the bucket so you can bring the water up.
Mm-hmm.
So a little bit all you need is use one, but they work.
All you need is a clean piece of plastic pipe, and you can buy that now when it's available. You can get that at any of these large home improvement stores. You can get the toilet flush valve at the same place. You can get any adapters you need to make this. And then you need some clean rope because you don't want to contaminate your well. And what you may end up doing is getting some unscented chlorine bleach so that you can treat your well and disinfect your well as time goes on. But you do want to keep that rope clean, and and I would suggest some kind of poly rope. And by the way, that's the same kind of rope that's used to hold a well pump in place, a submerged well pump, so that when you go to service your well pump, there is a piece of rope to pull that old well pump back out. So there is water in your well in most instances. You just need a way of getting it, and this is a very easy to fabricate way. It'll take a long time to get a lot of water, but you'll be able to quench that thirst and stay alive, in my opinion. Howard, getting into
the chlorine bleach.
Yeah.
Be aware that bleach has a shelf life, and you need to rotate it. It loses half its strength about every 6 months.
Okay. And do you do anything to increase the shelf life of non-scented bleach?
About the only thing you can really do is keep it sealed and keep it in the dark. I'm not aware of anything else that would increase the shelf life of it, other than to get the powdered bleach for a swimming pool, which will last for extreme periods of time, but is also a little bit dangerous to handle.
Oh, it absolutely is. I was in a chlorine fire when I was very young, and I think 35 pounds of HTH chlorine granules caught on fire because some dust from sawdust entered a small amount. I'm talking about less than an eighth of a teaspoon entered in there, and it immediately burst into flames. And it was a pretty serious fire. And putting out a chlorine fire is not something that you want to do. It's extremely hazardous and toxic. And since we're mentioning fires, that's something that is really important. And what happened? What do we do if there's a fire and we live in the country? It's tough. What are your thoughts on? Well, let's talk about prevention and then suppression.
Yeah, there's a couple of chapters in there on that I added to the book. It depends whether you're dealing with wildland or interior fires. Both can be a problem after a disaster. If you get a lot of people come up from the city and decide to move out and live in the woods, thinking they're going to be safe, a lot of them have no idea. They've never camped. They don't understand what duff is and how the organic materials will build up across the forest floor. They're going to start fires. Mm-hmm. And you can also assume that in that group will be a few arsonists or psychos who will start fires deliberately. Fires will occur. You need to set your homestead, your retreat up so that it can withstand a wildfire. I've seen people out here who think they're going to succeed. They're going to survive by hiding their home, by building brush up around it, and the exact wrong thing to do. You need that fire clearance. Inside, you're going to be using kerosene lanterns, possibly. You're going to be using maybe makeshift wiring. There's going to be fire hazards that you're not used to dealing with. You need to have some means to handling a small fire, and you have to be very, very careful. You have to watch your children around it. A friend of ours recently had their child fall into a campfire. If they had some poles in the ground around it, maybe put a little rope around it to keep the kids back, there wouldn't have been a problem. You cannot afford those kind of accidents after the grid is down.
I was at a local business here years ago in our neck of the woods in Missouri in the Ozarks, and I was chatting with this guy, and he said, "So, where actually do you live?" And I described the location. He goes, "Oh yeah, I know the guy who owned that before you." I had this. He had me take a bulldozer and build a fire break around the farm. So literally around our farm there is a fire break that's probably 150 feet wide at least. That is between us and the neighbor's woods. So if our woods were on fire, he'd be protected, and if his woods were on fire, we'd be protected. And you know, you and I chatted a couple days ago, and we were talking about fires, and I mentioned that one of the things that we were working on was making sure that we have a track loader. I bought an old 1970s vintage Caterpillar track loader, and this is like a bulldozer, except it's got a bigger bucket. And the plan is to have that at the ready, fully charged, ready to go, fueled up, so that if there is a fire that threatens our home, out come the bulldozer and the backhoe, and you know, we're going to be in the fire suppression business immediately. And that, you know, not everybody can do that, but that's something that we thought of. So was it worth $3,500 to buy an old track loader compared to putting money into insurance? I would certainly rather have the track loader in my circumstances here. So that's just one more way.
You're absolutely right.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it doesn't take a lot to put out a fire if you get to it at the right time. And one of the problems you've got, even with the track loader, is the fact that you're going to get hot embers come across that if you have a big fire in your neighbor's woods.
Yes,
so
right.
In addition to the track loader, you need to have something on hand to deal with the little embers. That can be as simple as a 5-gallon backpack, a 5-gallon Indian back pump. Now, a friend of mine years ago in 1970, when I was on the fire department in Southern California, they had a major wildland fire, and he went up to his parents' house because his parents had been evacuated. And he got there, the fire was near, there was good fire breaks around his parents' house. But hot embers were landing and starting little fires. Now, he went into the house, and the water was off. The power was gone, so there's no water. He thought real good, quick, and he grabbed a case of soda, and he ran around shaking up the soda and punching a hole in the cap and using that to put out the little embers. Now, just one case of soda saved his parents' house because it was there at the right time. And
that's absolutely brilliant. And soda is made fizzy with carbon dioxide, and fires can't live in an environment of carbon dioxide as well. I just looked up on eBay, as you were talking about, the 5-gallon hand pump fire extinguisher, and there it is, a copper 5-gallon container with a hand pump. Buy it now. $125. Here's another one, a DB Smith 19-inch brass hand pump backpack, Indian backpack, as you mentioned, $100. Buy it now. And then there are newer versions that are made out of plastic that look a little more comfortable, but they're plastic, $140. So here's another one from the 1930s, an Indian backpack, $75. So they're available, and looks like that would be the kind of purchase that, would last generations, because they've lasted generations before. So if you keep them from rusting, corroding, or if they're galvanized, what a great thought. And I'll bet you, Howard, you found them for less, didn't you?
I found them for less. I found them in garage sales. I found them all over. You have to remember, too, you can use those in the house.
Yep, we'll be right back. Class, let me just read some of the chapter titles in Howard's book, Emergency Preparedness and More, the second edition, a manual on food storage and survival. How to begin, some miscellaneous thoughts, water, food, how to store your food, preserving food, cooking and heating, lights, fuels, medical supplies, sanitation, bug out and get home bags, survival, improvised equipment and supplies, weapons of mass destruction, communications, trade, and precious metals, wildfire prevention and suppression, home fire protection, personal security, and some other thoughts. Over 400 pages. Howard, and this is available on Amazon. You can get it directly from Howard. And if Howard, do you want to talk about how to get them directly, or
sure?
Or do you want me to post that on the website?
They can contact me through a Facebook page, Prepper Books and Information, or they can contact me through my P.O. Box, which is Howard Godfrey, 3214, Auburn, California, 95604, or they can buy it off Amazon.
Okay.
So it's easy to get
Very
hold
good.
of.
And there's a link. Yeah, there's a link on page 1 of USA Prepares to get right to the, it takes you right to the Amazon website if you'd like to do that. Howard, if we can prevent some fires, and that's a lot easier than putting them out, a lot less expensive as well. Can you tell us some ways that we can prevent fires at home?
Sure. First of all, make sure that you've got good clearances around the home. Remember that when the fire department comes out and inspects your yard, which a lot of them do, they'll tell you it's fire safe. But remember, they are basing that on the fact that a fire truck is going to respond. If there's no fire truck coming, you better exceed what they tell you to do. Inside the house, you need to watch your electrical connections. You need to make sure you don't have 50 items plugged into a plug. You need to go through and make sure, control your flammable liquids. Make sure they're stored safely, especially in case of an emergency. If you're using kerosene lanterns, if you're using candles, you have to be aware of the fire hazard. You now have an open flame in the house.
I'm glad you mentioned kerosene. I'm glad you mentioned kerosene. We have kerosene lamps here at the house, and we thought that would be a great way to go. And I decided that it was not a great way to go because we have a dog. Thomas Jefferson is his name, and he's an English Mastiff. His tail is about even with the height of the kitchen table. So he could easily walk by and knock over one of those kerosene lamps and set the kitchen rug on fire. And the and the wooden furniture, and pretty soon the whole house is engulfed in flames. So we decided we were going to not use kerosene lamps. We were going to use LED lighting, and we have that already hooked up with a wall switch. You turn on the wall switch, and 12-volt lighting is ready to go, and we use it all the time. So that's something that we did to prevent a fire from kerosene or candles. And I mean, that's what happens, right? Most people have candles.
That's
but
right.
They don't have to.
And if you have to use candles for financial reasons, you can't afford to do something better, or because that's the only thing that's available to you, be sure that you've got a good heavy base on the candle holder. Be sure that you keep it under control. You keep it away from kids. You train your kids now how to handle fire. You don't wait till the emergency occurs. You make them aware of the hazards. You're careful where you set the candles in the house. You watch having them around drapes. If you're going to leave your windows open, you make sure that drapes don't blow into the fire, into the candles. Same thing with a wood stove. Use it now. Learn about it. Make sure that it's correctly installed.
You know, these are all tips that I've got mental images of fires having been started by wood stoves, by clearances too close to combustibles, fuel containers in the garage, sparks. You know, even having a grinding wheel on an electric motor that you sharpen tools with. Those sparks could ignite the fumes from a gas container nearby.
That's all very valid, all very true. Now, the thing is, when you install a wood stove, what happens, you can get what they call pyrophoric action behind it. If it's too close to a wood member or a flammable material, over time, the ignition temperature of that will lower if it's incorrectly installed.
My plan is to be independent. Howard, we're out of time. Thanks so much for being with us. Chain disruptions have a minimum impact on our family.
Thank you for having me.
That's the first thing that we'll do it again and again. Power goes out. Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? Hour number 2 of USAPrepares.com. Tracy Cesar's with us. And Tracy is a nurse, and she's been at the Get Prepared Expos, and she's been at the meetups, and I'm delighted to be broadcasting this hour with Tracy Cesar. Welcome, Tracy.
Hi, Vinny. Thanks for having me on.
Our pleasure. Hey, by the way, vaccinations. We're going to be talking about vaccinations today, right?
Yes.
My wife, Mrs. Finelli, mentioned that she was on the phone with you and that you have a very sad story to tell about vaccinations.
I really do, Vinny. I have a really dear friend down here in Branson that I don't believe anything's an accident when you meet these people. And she's a single mom with a 10-year-old autistic girl, severely autistic. She's nonverbal, aggressive. And while she has those things that she can't help, she's very, very precious. She has a sweet, sweet spirit when she can figure out how to express herself. Most of the time, it's through violence towards her mother. So last night, Jim and I had her over for dinner, the mother. We got her a babysitter for the little girl and had her over for dinner for a few hours just to give her a break and some peace and quiet. She does it 24 hours a day by herself unless the child's in school. And what happened was the baby was born perfectly normal. Everything was excellent, 100% on all of her testing that they do, you know, for infant milestones, etc., until she was 18 months old. And she was vaccinated, became catatonic, completely could tell the change in the child, drastic difference in the child's behavior, didn't respond to voice prompts, didn't say bye-bye, didn't, and unfortunately there's countless stories of people. This gal, single mom, does this by herself. The dad bolted, and Jim and I are just looking for ways and people that are experts in the area to help this gal, because that's what we're called to do, is help each other, you know. It isn't about how much can you pay me or what can you give me. It's about, it's the right thing to do, and this lady needs help. I put in a call to Dr. Shealy. He's going to call me back after the show. And I talked to my friend about it last night, and I said, you know, I just think that he'll be able to give us some tips and help, because he's a board-certified neurosurgeon. He's brilliant. At this point, she, of course, she's afraid of pharmaceutical medications. But at the same time, you're in a trap of, should I give that to my child to get them some peace, get me some peace. What are the long-term ramifications of giving them these pharmaceutical drugs, which I understand the fear, when we trust people to tell us what they need, and those folks really don't understand or admit it, even though they're coming along. The medical community is coming along to understanding it. They're not really to blame because they've not been taught it. And they're kept busy, so they can't research it to the degree that they need to. But vaccines are, I have two friends actually that have autistic children. This is one of them. And my other girlfriend has Asperger's. He's highly functioning, very, very bright kid. But I have her on the team, too, to help this gal because my heart just aches for her. One day I took duty for a few hours of a night and watched this child myself, and I came home with massive bruises on my arms. I was bit. And, it's you just get stuck. You get stuck. And the mother's mental state, of course, as you can imagine, Vinny, is catastrophic at this point. She is just grasping for some help. And our society, when it comes to autism, doesn't have resources. Medicaid, for instance, that's what the child has. They don't pay for occupational therapy. She needs some in-home health aides, that are qualified to help with autistic children. Finally, the school district just now hired a specific para, 23 years in autism experience, to help this little girl. And just in 1 week, there's progressive changes in her behavior because it's someone that knows how to deal with it, how to communicate with them, how to redirect their behaviors. So there's a lot of hopeful, really good things happening. And I'm excited to see Dr. Shealy because I respect him. He's a man of integrity, would never do anything to harm someone, researches all of his information to the nth degree, which I really, really love about Dr. Shealy because he doesn't just haphazardly say, oh, yeah, this will work, or he really digs in. So, anyway.
He absolutely does. As a matter of fact, I'm going to chat with him a little more about this tonight. I'm going to be meeting with Dr. Sergey Sorin, Dr. Norm Shealy, and Ed from Florida. Several of us are going to have a little chance to chat this evening. And I'm going to ask him more about this. So are you saying that, without question, my understanding is that you're saying that this autism has been caused, this particular instance has been caused by a vaccine?
100%.
Okay. And that means that this was medically induced?
Yes.
That also means that when a parent has a new child, they're told your child will receive these vaccines or your child will not be able to be educated in the public training system. Is that true as well?
Well, some doctors, unfortunately, believe so much in them that without, stepping aside to dig into and delve into, let's go like a timeline, what's happened. And it's not necessarily the education system because Missouri, the state of Missouri, I'm not sure about any other states in the country, have a religious waiver. And our
that's what we used when
we used our kids. Now I vaccinated my children when they were young because I believe, just like everyone else does,
right,
that it's the right thing to do. You don't want them getting sick. These diseases are scary. I personally believe the diseases are planted. Zika virus, they could have done the same thing with malaria. okay, for instance, to create fear. Our food, not only vaccinations, but our food supply is so compromised by big, corporations. What do you call it, it's Monsanto, but I know you have a special name for them.
Well, it's actually originated with Dr. Norman Shealy, and he calls it Monsanto.
Monsanto, that's right, yes. Growing your own food, that's being scrutinized now to where you have regulations on your own property, your own gardening, what you can do on your own property. It's just so far out of hand that I feel sorry for the population, but they can't grasp the concept, which I kind of understand because it took me a lot of years. Like I said, my husband's a doctor. We vaccinated our children. I believe one of my children has autistic characteristics, specifically from that. And the reason I say that is we had him vaccinated, and I was on a bowling league, and I came home one night from bowling, and I looked in the cradle. He's laying by our bed near my husband. I looked in the cradle, and his hands were swollen as if you blew up a latex glove. Yep. And I yanked him up out of the cradle. It literally freaked me out. Jim was sleeping. I go, get up. Something's wrong. It was really, really obvious that something was wrong. And thank God that, I really have nothing to complain about with my son. I know there are things with him, certain sounds, certain smells, decision-making capabilities that I don't believe are just genetics. Everything is blamed on genetics. I believe it's created. And it's from years and years of research. I don't just say things lightly to be, I have no bones to pick. The only bone I have to pick is I want society to be happy, healthy, free from these torments. I know that they have cures for many, many things that they're suppressing. The government is suppressing purposely to reduce the population.
No question.
There's holistic doctors. 60 of them were killed in a year. They committed suicide. Are you kidding me? I think Norma said it a few times that if I die, I didn't commit suicide.
Right. I've said the same thing.
When you connect some dots together, it's just common sense, which our society lacks so profoundly that it's frightening to me. That frightens me more than anything is the lack of common sense and the lack of willingness to research for yourself. Don't take someone else's word for it. Dr. Shealy and you both will say the same thing. How about you go spend an hour or two? I've spent 15 years researching, 15 years. I don't have no degree in my research because I refuse to go to college and get the degree. I don't have to. I can get on the internet, read about certain treatments, and know that they're effective because of testimony,
Let's talk more about this case of autism when we come back. Let's talk about what it does to the caregiver, what it does to the mother, what it does to the family. And then I'm going to ask you this question. What would happen if you left this 10-year-old alone for an hour? Class, Tracy Cesar's with us. She's a nurse. Her husband is Dr. James Cesar, medical doctor in Branson, Missouri. And both Tracy and James Cesar have been at the Get Prepared Expo, teaching classes, and been to the meetups. Tracy, what would happen if the mother of this 10-year-old autistic child left the child home alone for 1 hour?
Oh, geez. It would be horrific. Oh my gosh. I really need you to understand something, because these children can't help their behaviors. They're trapped in their mind. This little girl is literally very, 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 very intelligent, but she cannot communicate to you what she needs or what makes her upset, or she has severe obsessive-compulsive disorder. So, for instance, if you're going into their home and you're going to cross a threshold of a door, so from the living room to the kitchen, you have to say, okay, I need to go to the kitchen and get some coffee. Now, if you don't do that, so you just walk through the threshold on your own and get the coffee, it's a complete, total meltdown. Things are going to be thrown everywhere. You're going to be hit, bit, etc. You know, and so the point I want to get across about these children is that a lot of people are afraid of them because they shout out, they scream, there's so much stimulation going on in their brains at one time that it becomes frustrating to them, especially when you can't vocalize. But if something happened to my friend, I just told her last night, I said, if something happens to you, I'll take care of her. It's a very, very big responsibility. She has family that help her. Bella gets $700 a month for Social Security disability. The mother can't work outside the home. Today, she has to spend the day cleaning while the child's at school so that she can have some peace and quiet. The mother is so broken, beat up, scared, frustrated, angry, all of these emotions that go along with 24-hour care of a handicapped, really, person, okay? This happens to be a child that is 100% dependent on her mother. 100%. I don't know what would happen. In the case of some catastrophic event, they'll be coming to the farm, and we'll do the best we can, you know. Different sounds, for instance, she was sitting on my lap last night when I picked up her mother, and the dogs in the neighborhood started barking, and it totally sends her literally off a cliff. And so I just squeezed her, and I said, oh, the dogs are singing. And she heard me and plugged her ears with her fingers, plugged her ears, and she heard that I said the dogs are singing. So you have to think of ways to redirect the thought process, because the sound is so annoying to her that it makes her act out. It's not something she can control at all, you know? And the mother is, oh dear, I don't even know really how to explain it, but she's willing to work. She would like to work. She loves doing waitressing, service work, something to get her out into the community, communicating with people, making friendships. She has no friends. She's isolated, severely isolated. She has a support group through Facebook, an autism support group, which I think is awesome, because the only people that really can relate are those that are in it and those that experience it.
Tracy, when we come back, can you answer this question? What would happen if the mother took the 10-year-old child to the supermarket to buy food? What would happen on one of those routine adventures that we take for granted? We'll be right back. Tracy Cesar's with us, and Mike in Tennessee, welcome.
Greetings. I just got off the phone with Lauren from Ohio, who is naturopathic, and she does have success with treating children with autism. She said it's just a combination of detoxifying, getting rid of all the heavy metals, castor oil, cod liver oil. I'm sorry, not castor, cod liver oil. And there's a few other things that she mentioned. She would have called in. I tried to get her to, but she's in the middle of making a movie right now, and she can't. But I I got as much as I could get. I wanted to call in and mention that naturally, I'm sure Dr. Shealy's probably going to have these ideas and more, but it, according to her, is very much treatable, curable, and correctable. And I just wanted to share that information with you.
Mike, Lauren from Ohio is a USA Preparedness instructor, and she was a pharmaceutical representative. She's got a wealth of information. So, Tracy, if it's okay with you, would you like me to put you in touch with Lauren from Ohio?
Sure, that would be awesome. And like I said, we're going to connect with Dr. Shealy. Here's a couple of more issues that most people can't understand about this disease also is that this child will only eat brown food. So apple juice is kind of brown, French fries, chicken McNuggets, potato chips, things that aren't good, but at the same time, they don't explore or eat other things, you know? This child happens to be advancing in that area to a degree. For instance, just recently started chewing on an apple. Over the summer, they brought in some vegetables from the farmer's market, and she gnawed on a pepper. So yes, it's just kind of like forming a team, and when the team is formed, you can implement these different areas to successfully make progress. Up until now, the mother has had no, idea of how to put that together exactly. No one pretty much being an advocate, you know. There are people that care around her, but not aware of the resources. I'm open to any resources because I have no idea, be honest with you. I do know of one thing that has changed people's lives. They had to move to a different state. I don't know if you want to talk about it or not, but there was a child, briefly, without saying too much, that her mother took her to a different state, started treating her with things that are illegal there. The child was nonverbal, aggressive, the exact same things. Now the child is verbal, can communicate, not aggressive anymore. It made a drastic difference in their life.
So you're talking about medical marijuana, right?
They couldn't have before.
You're talking about medical marijuana or marijuana?
Yes. Yeah. Yes, we're proponents and would like legalization of it across the country. And if our new president-elect follows through on his promises, that will happen. But
yeah,
I need to tell you,
yes.
Vinny, Doc and I are not suicidal. We have brand new tires on our car and brakes. We have no medical issues per se that would cause death of any kind, especially for both of us. Doc wanted me to let you know that for sure.
Okay, so there are threats to your lives?
No, we haven't had one, but talking about this stuff opens up a whole new can of worms. And I want to be on record on your show that if anything happens to us, I'm not afraid of death, but if anything happens, be very suspicious.
And if anything happens, we will ring the alarm loud, clear, wide, and far. And we have the network of broadcasters who are ready to jump in at a moment's notice should anything happen to any of us. No question. I'm very serious about that. We put that in place years ago.
Okay,
Tracy,
thank you. I just wanted to go ahead and mention it while I'm on with you so that people are aware that, no, we're not suicidal.
Tracy, what would happen if you took this child to a supermarket? Let's say your mother took this particular child with autism to a routine for just about everybody trip to the supermarket with a child or children. What would happen?
Well, it's the same thing because she does do this. They go to the grocery store and Target. Number one, people stare at these folks as if they have some control over the behaviors of their children. It's not some child that is acting out because the parents won't buy it a toy. There's so many different stimuluses, another child screaming or in order to cross the threshold to get in the store, the child has to go in first. There's a routine of getting in the cart. She was just telling me about last night, as a matter of fact, that because she's too heavy now to lift into the cart, so she pulls the whole top up. She crawls in the hole and crawls around by herself to get in, and it's a process of how you kind of have to do things. But yeah, she mentioned that people stare and look at her. For instance, the child got away in the yard one day, crossed over the imaginary threshold into the neighbor's yard. The neighbor grabbed the child by the hand and brought her to the front door with evil devil looking at the mother as if they had control over the situation or and purposefully did that. It's just society's lack of knowledge and compassion, you know. That's the thing that Doc and I have committed to, along with her family members and a couple of friends, to just love these people, you know. And I'll tell you, the little girl, she can tell the people that are there with non-judgment and good, kind spirits. She knows. So taking her out, the mother, that's one of the obstacles that we have right now, is that the mother doesn't have transportation. The vehicle needs to be specially modified with, you know, like a police vehicle, basically, so that objects aren't thrown at you while you're driving, so that, you know, if there's an outbreak, the child's safe. But that she can use this vehicle to get the child the help that she needs, to get herself the help that she needs. Once things are more manageable in the situation, that she can get a job, you know, to be around
wouldn't
people,
it be nice
not be isolated.
Wouldn't it be nice if her husband were there? And so she's a single mom. And can you imagine trying to find, you know, that ideal male to be her spouse, and bringing this man home for the first time? I'd like you to meet my daughter.
Yeah.
It'd be over right then and there.
Well, it takes a really, really, really special person to see through and past some of that, you know. But it's you're committing to a full time, the rest of your life. Okay. Commitment here. It's not just something that's going to go away. My children, 2 of them have grown up and left the house. They're working on their own, you know, paying their own bills. That's never going to happen. It's a lifetime commitment, which, you know, her mother, I really am telling you, she's one step from a saint. I mean, for real. The woman absolutely amazes me because, like I said, I spent a few hours taking care of the child to give him a break one evening. And I come home and I told Doc, I said, you know, I could not even imagine, I really can't comprehend doing that 24 hours a day. It takes a person that's absolutely 100% amazing. Absolutely amazing.
And even when the caregiver is sleeping, I'm sure if the person thinks at all during the night, it's about what's going to happen tomorrow. And I know what it's like to take care of a person for just 10 years, but not to a
all
great extent.
And you know, my brother, I had a niece that was total care handicapped for over 20 years. She just passed away back in January. But the same types of things happen out in society as they're looked upon as scary. Why can't you control them? Or just a very large stigma against disabled, handicapped children. Now, I know that all of society is not like that, but if I could get anything across to people that are listening, is that try to see these people with love and not so much remorse and pity, you know, because there's a sense, that creates a little bit of anger over that also, but just love the people and be kind and understanding, compassionate. When you get in your car, wherever you see them, be very grateful for your life, okay? Be very grateful that your family is healthy. Be very grateful that you're capable of looking up the information that I'm talking about on your own. Not because the pediatrician said so. You do your own research with an open mind. And it's not only about medical marijuana. Marijuana is not a gateway drug, okay? Nicotine and alcohol, both legal, are gateway drugs. There's so many treatments out there, the holistic doctors, there's some connections between them that, not every one of them had the connections, but there were two things that a large number of them understood and were trying to treat people for, was the cancer treatment and CBD oil. Another thing, Vinny, is that ibogaine, which most people have probably not heard about, treats addiction. It's illegal in the United States.
Tracy Cesar, a very serious broadcast today. When we come back, would you like to talk about Norm Shealy and past life regression?
I would love to.
Let's do that when we come back. Class, Nurse Tracy Cesar's with us, and we're going to talk about Dr. Shealy's past life regression. I want to tell you that I lost a dear friend. Dr. Shealy was here at the farmhouse. We're in the studio, and we're up. There were a bunch of guys in the studio, and the gals were downstairs in the kitchen. And Dr. Shealy mentioned past life regression. I said, I'd like to learn more about it. I don't know anything about it. And right then and there, I lost a friend, and this friend, that was years ago, and it separated us. Just mentioning past life regression, and Dr. Shealy wanted to perform spiritual healing at our meetup, and I said, sure, we can make that happen. And he and one of his spiritual healing friends did a test. Dr. Shealy brought his EKG machine, and next thing I know, Dr. Shealy is then banned from the meetups, the USA Prepares meetups. And as a result of that, I got banned. I got banned from my own meetup. So I can't even go to my own meetup. And Tracy, you want to talk about this?
Sure. When you told me that what happened, I was literally caught off guard. I couldn't believe it because I also don't know a lot about past life regression, but what I can tell you is this. What I know about Dr. Shealy, now first off, Jim and I listen to his show and he implements a lot of what Dr. Shealy talks about in his patients, okay? D3, which has made a profound difference in people's overall health and how they feel. He's done lab testing in order to find people's levels of D3, taking the supplements from, Walmart, Walgreens, etc., which they don't exist. There is no D3 in the people's body. Who knows what they're taking? Now, I go into telling you all of that to get to this point. Dr. Shealy investigates and thoroughly, 100% researches every single thing that he says and stands behind it. He is a board-certified neurosurgeon that figured out very early, thank God, that modern medicine oftentimes does not alleviate the patient's conditions. Then he was the founder of the TENS unit, which is the electrical stimulation to redirect the neural pathways so that the pain receptors don't hit where the person's receiving pain, basically. I was taken aback and literally appalled over the perception of the past life regression. And, I think, Vinny, I asked you, was this a religious thing, or, what were the obstacles preventing people from just listening. It doesn't mean that you ever have to participate in something. You know, we've been given free will. But at the same time, I consider Dr. Shealy one of the most brilliant doctors I've ever talked to, okay? I have witnessed him at the Get Prepared Expo treating people standing there for absolutely zero, nothing free, okay? Simply because he knows what works. He has compassion for people, wants them to feel better. He doesn't just fly by the seat of his britches and off the cuff say, you know, do this, do that, etc. He has his own vitamin. The multivitamin that Dr. Shealy has is one of the best ever. You feel like a different person. And he purposely, I believe, did the multivitamin himself because of all the fillers. Who knows what ingredients you're getting from other manufacturers, you know? When you get stuff from him, be it information or suggestions or get this type of vitamin, this, if you will, brand name, because he knows that they're not full of garbage. So,
Tracy, we're almost out of time. We've got another 20 seconds.
Well, I'm privileged to know him, and I think that all things, God is way bigger than the box we put him in. Let's put it like that. Yeah. If that's where the hang-up is, and it saddens me that people have to close off their mind.
You're absolutely right. Tracy Cesar, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you,
I'd
Vinny.
like to talk more about this, in future broadcasts. I'll give you a call and let's get you scheduled. Tracy Cesar, nurse. We're talking about autism. Class, above all, honesty and integrity. What happens next is up to you.